Hello, everyone. We're excited to have you join Registrar Corp for 51% of FDA's FSVP audits fail, 3 new ways to ensure success. We'll be discussing common FSVP challenges, best practices, and tools to automate and simplify FSVP compliance. I'm proud to introduce our first speaker, Coley Anderson, Director of Industry and Government Relations. Coley has more than 17 years of experience with FDA compliance and conducts seminars on U.S. FDA in more than 20 countries. Without any further ado, Coley, take it away.
Thank you so very much, Alexa. I tell you, Alexis, sorry, Alexis, I am super excited to be a part of this webinar today, and I'm even more excited to have my colleague, John Kelly, on the call. John Kelly's got 10 years plus of experience, but he's worked with companies that have had solutions, software solutions for our clientele, importers, retailers, importer distributors, and manufacturers. So he knows solutions that work for our clients. And not only does he know the solutions, but what's really amazing is he knows the industry. I mean, like in and out, and he understands what our clients, how their challenges, in their importing process and in their whole food safety process. He's worked in several different areas in that. So I'm excited to have John. We're not going to hear from him now, but you can see him there in the corner. And we will hear from John later on in our program. Okay, next slide. Now, with the excitement I had for John, I have equally for Jacqueline Williams. She is one of Registrar Corp clients. She works with Wyman's. And Wyman's, as you can see on the screen, has had plenty of years experience in the import business. They're fruit importers. And Jacqueline manages their regulatory and compliance. And she has a BS in science, food science. And more importantly, she is in the trenches. And she has experienced FDA. She is working in the food safety. She helps with the FSVP or manages the FSVP process. So she has some really great feedback and input that we're going to talk about today. Next slide. Now, before we get started, I always like, for those of you who are not super familiar with Registrar Corp, hard to believe, but it is possible, I'd like to tell you who's speaking to you. So as a regulatory global leader, we come to you with over 30,000 clients that we work with, over 45,000 suppliers around the world that we monitor their FDA compliance. We work in over 175 countries, and yes, we have 20 worldwide offices. So we're in Europe, we're in Central America, South America, Africa, Asia. So wherever your supply chain is, and if they need FDA compliance assistance, we can assist them in their time zone and in their language. And we have 20 years plus experience. So we're excited to come and participate in this webinar and share our experience along with our clients' feedback as well. Next slide. I also want to point out, not only who's speaking to you, but who do we work with? So we're not only just in the food and beverage world, but we're in the medical device, drugs, and cosmetic world. So as you can see before you, if we have any of our clients by the way, on the call and you don't see your brand, it's because we didn't actually get permission from you. But you send me an email and we'll list you next time. But these are the type of companies and the clients that we do work with. We take your compliance seriously, and these clients believe that we do a really great job. Next slide. Okay, so before we jump in, let's talk about the agenda. We're going to do a quick FSVP overview. We're going to talk about best practices and challenges because, let's face it, FSVP has been around for a while now. We have no more excuses. So we really need to get into the nitty-gritty of what is FSVP, how do we manage it, and just some really good solutions to keep our compliance in the FSVP area. Next slide. Okay, so I always think it's an important starting point to talk about what is the point of FSVP, and it's for the big theme of it is to keep our food safe and keep our consumers safe, and make sure that there's no hazards in the food that our consumer is consuming. But the other part of that is FDA can't inspect everyone, and they can't check everything at the port. So what they do is they say, hey, US importer, it's because of you this product is coming into the United States. So let's start with you as the catalyst of that product being shipped here. You do some due diligence. And that's kind of the thought process behind it. It says US importer, you're the first line of defense. You're engaging these suppliers, finding them all over the world. So we want to kind of highlight that it's not a target on the US importer and trying to penalize him, but more so say, hey, this is a great way to capture and get some due diligence on a supplier that they have engaged. Now, another important part of FSVP, how do you know when you're the FSVP importer? And I hear a lot of people ask me that. So I have this litmus test here where it says, did you agree to purchase the product before it left the foreign country? Do you own it at the time of entry? Now, these are really simple questions, but they're super important. Are you the ultimate consignee? Is this product imported for you and only your company? And if you can answer yes to any of these questions, then you have the obligation of FSVP importer. And what gets more challenging is if two people can answer yes to these questions, and then it can be some chaos, right, Jacqueline? You can have where maybe it's not clearly defined as to who the FSVP importer is, which brings me to the question to you, Jacqueline. In your business, when is it decided or confirmed who the FSVP importer is?
We confirm who's FSVP importer at the time of collecting information from the supplier. We make it clear that we assume liability, and because we're receiving the product, we will be the FSVP importer of record. But that is always discussed up front before we receive or write any purchase order.
Excellent, excellent. Because that often does not happen. I mean, everyone's so quick to rush to get the buy, get the product, but it's never really discussed. And I'm starting to see it now more and more that people are putting it into contracts, having a written confirmation, because that's important. And another important point to really highlight here is importer of record versus FSVP importer. I hear a lot of US importers say, I know we're not the FSVP importer. I've looked at the documents. I see that we're not importer of record. Common misconception. Importer of record is a customs term, has nothing to do with FDA. FSVP importer is an FDA term, and it has everything to do with FDA. And the challenging part is when your custom broker goes in and puts the entry in, you have the importer of record, and then when the database distinguishes that this is a food that's being imported, a little pop-up window comes up and says, who's the FSVP importer? You put the DUNS number in, and then once that pop-up box goes away and the documents are printed, there's no evidence of who the FSVP importer is. It's not in your shipping documents. All you see is the importer of record, and it's not related. So it's really super important that everybody on this call hears me today saying importer of record is a customs term, has nothing to do with your FSVP obligation. Now, you can be both. You can be importer of record and FSVP importer, but they are two separate things. So you want to make sure, like Jacqueline says, you get up front a confirmation of who the FSVP importer is. And then when it really, really boils down to is whose DUNS number is being used in that entry in the FSVP importer party section. So that's super important to note. Next. So now that we kind of figured out why FSVP and when you are an FSVP importer, let's talk about what the results are in these FSVP inspections. FDA has unleashed themselves, right? And they're out there saying enough time, enough education. It is now time to inspect these US importers, whether it's remote and on site. These are the results of that. 51% of US importers failed their FSVP audit last year. That's scary. And then here we have in the results where they were deficient. And the number one deficiency was developing the FSVP at all. And then you go down from there, evaluation of performance risk and approved supplier procedures. These are things that are super important. And I kind of want to throw this at Jacqueline, sorry. Which of these, when you look at this list of violations, do you think that your industry would find most challenging? Like, what do you think? I mean, I guess developing the FSVP is clearly the most challenging, but let's just go beyond that. Of all these things, when you look at them, do you say, oh gosh, yeah, that's a tough one to do? What do you think do you find most challenging in this list?
It's tough to argue with developing the Foreign Supplier Verification Program because what we struggle with is the time to sit down and write programs in this industry. And in the role of food safety and quality, you get pulled in 1,000 different directions that it can be very difficult to find the time to develop the program and write out exactly what you do. And I understand wholeheartedly why people are struggling with that if they're not given the time. But the other part that I think people struggle with is the hazard analysis. It's the guidance on hazard analysis is a little bit open-ended, and so you can get really lost in the weeds of what is considered a hazard for a product or not.
Right. No, absolutely. And that's why, we can say rather confidently that people do reach out for assistance and reach out to Registrar Corp because, like you said, sitting down and developing an FSVP takes time and a lot of, human resource where it needs to be used in other areas, especially in your operations, your day to day. So we often get that phone call to say, hey, Registrar Corp, we need help writing our FSVPs. And there's no shame in that because it's better to have us write it than you to have the violation of not developing it at all. So thank you for sharing that. Next slide. So the negative impacts of FSVP audits. Now, this was quite shocking, and I've actually experienced this with a client where, a lot of people understood FSVP as it's not collected at the port, it's not collected at the border, so this should not affect the flow of the import and export. And that usually it's maybe it will be dealt with in a recall or, on a warning letter or something like that. But we are actually seeing import refusals happening. And in a perfect storm where FDA remote inspects a client and that client has a shipment on the water or a shipment at the port, and now they've been remote inspected. Now FDA is saying, show me your FSVPs, and you've got a shipment coming in 2 or 3 days, and you say, I don't have them. Well, now you've just told FDA that entire shipment that's entering port, which they now know what's on that shipment, that you don't have FSVPs for. And we had a client in Maryland, an importer, that had this very same perfect storm where the inspection was remote, came in, they had to answer no, no, no. Then FDA forwarded more. So when we see a shipment on the water, do you have any FSVPs for these? The answer was no. And then FDA then issued a warning letter, an import alert, import refusal, and their option was to refuse or destroy the product. Now that was big because now we need to really understand the seriousness and the gravitas of FSVP compliance. It can definitely affect the refusal at the port, demurrage fees, civil penalties. I think, Jacqueline, you shared with us you have not had any issues with FSVP audits, so that's great news. But can you share with us kind of what the cost is or what it means to your business when you have these type of delays at the port? Have you had that before? And can you talk to us how it affects your business?
Absolutely. As you spoke, I kind of thought about what the impact is to industry when others fail these audits, and there's a potential that costs others, including our company, a lot of time and money because that same supplier may now be on an FDA watch list because they were rejected. And in demurrage fees alone, tens of thousands of dollars annually, sometimes raising into the hundreds of thousands during the pandemic, for example. And then rejected product, it's a cost of downtime. Now you can't run because you don't have enough product if you were expecting that to arrive for a production run, and customer cutting, all negative impacts to the brand.
Right, absolutely. So the last thing you want, if you can be in control of anything, you don't want compliance and to be a reason why something is delayed or stopped on your side of the fence. And so, and Registrar Corp, we try to do as much as we can to keep our importers educated and trained, give you the tools and the resources so that you're always aware of what's going on, so you don't have this issue, because it, like I said, it affects your business. Next slide. So another thing I like to do is level set. What is actually happening? People have different ideas and definitions of what an FSVP is. I have been on the phone with people, companies, where they tell me an FSVP, they've collected the food safety documents, they're safely in a folder, they're all up to date, and that's their FSVP. So I've had as basic as that to we collect the food safety documents, and we've reviewed them, they look great, and that's your FSVP. And like Jacqueline said earlier, I mean, the time to get this done, I mean, you're doing well getting the documents, right? Because that could even be challenging collecting documents from a supplier. So in this, we just kind of want to very generally point out what's actually happening. Okay, so you're going to reach out to your supplier and you're going to collect these documents. Hopefully you've had them sooner than later, but if you don't, you got to collect these food safety documents. And then based on the product risk, the supplier risk, those documents may change a little bit on what you're asking from supplier to supplier. Then you need to review those documents and look for any possible gaps in compliance. And when they're manufacturing or processing a food, then you write the FSVP based on what you've reviewed. Any corrective actions that should be taken, and maybe you might have to reach out to that supplier again for clarification on something. And then you state the verification activities based again on the risk level of the product, the hazards, the supplier themselves, the country maybe even. You look at the verification activities. Those verification activities could be testing, that could be third-party audits. That's up to your qualified individual to determine that based on the risk level. And again, you might have to contact the foreign supplier for further verification of things or information. And then you have to actually perform the verification activities, and then you approve that supplier. And maybe not directly in that order, but these things are all happening and should be happening when you are writing an FSVP. So you can imagine if you have 50, 100, I'm sure all of you do have at least 25, 50, 75 suppliers. This is very labor intensive. So, and it's for that reason, again, we really encourage understanding what that FSVP process is. We have online training that many of our clients use, and it's FSVP. A lot of clients take the PCQI training, which is outstanding, but we also want to make sure they take the FSVP because that helps you organize what you're doing and understand what you're collecting and what your process should be. Next slide. Next slide. Thank you. So I want to take a moment, back that up one, Alexis. Go back one. Thank you. So I want to take a moment because I would be remiss not to address the foreign exporter. I don't know if we have any foreign exporters on here, but I always go, I want to address that because when I'm traveling around the world giving seminars on export to the U.S., I think it's important. FSVP is relevant to the foreign exporter. They need to understand what the expectation of their U.S. importer is. And I tell all of my foreign exporters, food safety documents, get them ready. Don't even try to come to these trade shows and not have your food safety documents organized. Make sure you're registered. Don't do that after you get the buyer. The buyer wants to know that you're compliant. In this environment of FSVP, it's important to the buyer to see that you've actually done something, taken steps that show that you're a serious player in this U.S. market and that compliance is in your, head of thought. You want to make sure your label is correct. That's the number one reason why products are detained at the port or the border. And then establish an FSVP agent when there is no importer. So if the foreign exporter, if you are on this call and you're shipping to a trade show or to a warehouse and you have no Wyman's or Kroger or anybody to import your product, you will need to hire someone to review your food safety documents, review your processes, and confirm that your product is safe for import. And that's, again, something Registrar Corp does. So if you do need an FSVP agent because you do not have a U.S. importer and you're shipping to a trade show or whichever, we can help you with that. And additionally, based on your product specifics, you may need an FCE SID, which is for canned foods, or a HACCP plan for juice or seafood. So it's important as a foreign exporter to be U.S. market ready. You need these documents. And I can tell you, Jacqueline, you could probably speak to this, that, it's a lot easier and you can lower the barriers of complication to do business with a supplier when they have their food safety documents ready, right?
Absolutely. A broker or an not an importer, but a supplier who has all the documents ready are a lot easier to work with and are definitely favored over those who are not prepared to import.
Right. It's top of mind for the U.S. importer now, and John's going to share with us later, but we have a feature in the ComplyHub that allows our U.S. importer to source FDA compliant products and suppliers around the world. And why is that important? Because it's hard to get these documents, and now it matters to the U.S. importer because of FSVP regulations. Next slide. Thank you. So, best practices. This is my favorite slide because I hear so many different holes in the process where things go wrong for our U.S. importers because these best practices are not in place. And I'm not going to read every single one of them, but I'm going to definitely say training is great. And again, so many people have the PCQI training. I really encourage the FSVP. It's like the final, touch for the U.S. importer because you can understand the PCQI, but the FSVP really just pulls it all together for the importer. And then confirming if who the FSVP importer is. We talked about that. And so that's super important that we do that. And then thirdly, don't just monitor your suppliers. Monitor your DUNS number. Okay, now this is something that a lot of people don't realize. We talk about who the FSVP importer is and who makes the agreement to be FSVP importer, but in the end, it boils down to what that custom broker puts into the system. The DUNS number in the FSVP party field is going to be, if it's yours, then that's a problem. Someone's misusing your DUNS number or they should be using it. And so therefore it's important that you monitor your DUNS number for misuse. And John Kelly is going to share with us in our ComplyHub how you can do that. A lot of people are monitoring the suppliers, but please remember to monitor the DUNS number. At least 2 trained individuals on site. I mean, I've seen it so many times where somebody goes out on maternity leave or somebody leaves due to illness or somebody can't come in the office and there's nobody else behind to handle FSVP or quality. So we really recommend at least 2 people. And then even in many cases, companies have 2 people and then they outsource to Registrar Corp for FSVP writing or support in some way, whether it's through the software, whether it's through our FSVP writing, our qualified individual services. Anyway, you want to make sure there's always somebody on duty because it's always when they're not there that FDA can show up. And then another area I want to really highlight is keeping facilities in an organized way. Keeping them organized in one place allows you to catch errors. You mentioned, Jacqueline, when suppliers change addresses or they might change names, having it on a dormant static list is not helpful. But when you see it on something that's it's automated and it's moving about, you can catch these things a lot easier. So definitely recommend making sure that you don't just have your list of suppliers on a static Excel spreadsheet, but it should be somewhere dynamic where you can really track things. Anything you want to add or any comments you want to make, Jacqueline, about these best practices that stand out to you?
I think you really covered the DUNS number. That's a really big one that we've found a lot of benefit from. It was actually Registrar Corp that brought to our attention the importance of monitoring your DUNS number, and we found people utilizing our DUNS number inappropriately.
Yeah.
But also the food safety documentation piece, collecting it. Registrar Corp has been so helpful in organizing and collecting our documentation. It's a large part of why we've successfully navigated 2 separate FSVP audits.
Oh, well, thank you for saying so. And again, this is what we do all day long, every day. So, and I'm again, cannot highlight enough. A lot of people say, well, we know who we're importing from. This is not a problem. And I said, monitoring the DUNS number is really never about the U.S. importer not knowing who he's importing from. It's about who's misusing your DUNS number. And why does that happen? Often people can be using your DUNS number, or you have an additional supplier that you're not aware of using your DUNS number for like 3 reasons. 1, because they're shipping to a trade show and they have your DUNS number either from working with you previously, so they use it on a shipment going to Fancy Food in New York and not to Wyman's or to another importer, and now they've used your DUNS number. You're responsible for that shipment as far as FDA is concerned. Another reason why you might not know about a supplier is because FDA says you have to keep a supplier on your list up to 2 years after you've stopped doing business with them. So many people remove them from the list and don't realize you're still responsible for information regarding that supplier. So that's another reason why you wanted to monitor and manage your supply chain and understand it. Keep it in a dynamic area so that you can always be aware of who you should be collecting food safety documents for. And then another reason why this happens is often a supplier will have one facility in Mexico at address A, and then without telling you, switches production lines because some electricity went out in the middle of the night and switches production lines to another address B in Mexico City. Now you have a unique food safety environment shipping to the United States to your DUNS number, and you're not monitoring that supplier and you are not collecting any documents for them because that supplier was at address A. You have everything for address A, but you don't have it for address B. So this is super important to keep on top of your supply chain list and your DUNS number. I think I'm going to say enough about that. I feel strongly. But anyway, yes, next slide. So, what it's really boiling down to, and the resounding theme that I'm hearing everywhere, whether you're keeping it on, I talk to people keeping Google Docs, laptops, their documents on laptops, the hard drives of the laptops. They're putting it in static dormant software solutions, Excel spreadsheets, and what we find is the information is decentralized, it's disorganized, and it's manual verification. You can't imagine the complexities that I've seen built on an Excel spreadsheet where people are like, we've got an Excel spreadsheet and we've got documents here and we've got suppliers listed here. The complexity, they could probably make $1 million selling that Excel spreadsheet, but still it is static. No matter what they try, it's static. And what you put there doesn't change unless you change it. And so therefore, that is not a solution that's going to work for a FSVP program that's constantly scaling. On imports, as a U.S. importer, you're constantly swapping out suppliers, increasing your suppliers, decreasing your suppliers. So you really need a system that is going to be dynamic and next slide, and be able to address centralization, organization, and automation. And this is why Registrar Corp built ComplyHub. And this is why companies like Jacqueline Williams at Wyman's uses our software. And I'm so excited because John's here and he's going to tell us more about it. And I can stop talking and drink my water. But no, more than anything, John's going to talk to us about how our system centralizes, organizes, and automates. You can take it from here, John.
Thank you. Sure. Thank you for the intro, Coley, and thank you so much for sharing your experience with FSVP compliance and how ComplyHub is an asset for the team at Wyman's. Jacqueline, we'll throw back to you to share a little bit more of that once we get through the demonstration. But for now, as promised, I've gone ahead and shared screen, and what you see here is the landing page for My FDA. Any of our customers would be familiar with My FDA for managing their registration, prior notice, accessing online training, in addition to ComplyHub solution. When you click into ComplyHub, you will land on our automated supplier feed. This is an incredibly powerful tool that pulls data from 6 different publicly available databases. It is constantly updated, and it also pulls in information from third-party audit agencies. So we're bringing in information that is beyond what's available in the public scope through the FDA's databases. You see your feed of suppliers over here, which is automatically updated based on data feeds that we set up with the FDA as we configure your account. And each of your suppliers includes a comprehensive report of any issues they may have experienced with the FDA or with compliance over the last 2 years. This evaluates all of their shipments, not just for products that you are considering. And so when you're evaluating a supplier and looking at their history, you can see that we're pulling data, as I mentioned, from 6 different publicly available FDA databases and automating the process of performing the basic continuous monitoring activities that the FDA expects as part of FSVP. The act of aggregating this information into a report like this saves, by our estimation, at least 40 hours per supplier per year. And anybody who has been diligent about going to the databases and searching and documenting, I think you'll find that it ends up being quite a bit more than that. We also add value, as I mentioned, by partnering with SQF, FSSC, and IFS to get third-party audit status and certifications and updates to those as they change. Importantly, the data is not just captured in this comprehensive reporting. Anytime a new issue is identified with a supplier that you are monitoring, you and other users are alerted with an email to allow you to take action quickly. And you can also dive into your supplier. Not all products, not all shipments, and not all food safety issues are created equal. And so you can do some due diligence and make a decision to work with a supplier. Even if you see a high risk score, it doesn't mean that your product is at risk. And so with just a couple of clicks, you can dive deeper into that supplier's export history to the United States and evaluate potential safety risks there. And so if you are somebody importing ashwagandha from this supplier, you may want to look for new sources, but by the same token, if you're buying cinnamon, you have an opportunity to keep doing business. And this would help you identify opportunities for better food safety practices, perhaps some more verification activities that you could perform with that supplier. The final thing I'll show here is how, as both Jacqueline and Coley mentioned, how the platform will automatically reveal instances where your DUNS number is being used incorrectly, or perhaps where your supplier is shipping from an unauthorized location. If you look at the status of the suppliers over here, somebody who is automatically sent into the feed comes in with no status. And our customers who are diligent about managing their supply chain should never see somebody in no status. They would have evaluated, reviewed, and approved those suppliers. And so oftentimes when you see that a no status supplier is in the feed, that's automatically updated, not just every month, but as soon as the FDA has the information from customs, we get that from the FDA and get it into the system. And so as soon as that is available, you would see that a supplier at this location has used your DUNS number and tied it to a shipment that's coming in. That allows you to take action and determine this is an approved supplier who is using an unapproved location, or somebody who's not a supplier at all, who's incorrectly using your DUNS number to get a shipment through customs, perhaps because their actual customer is on an import alert because they've not been using a technology like this to maintain FSVP compliance. And so this, again, is a quick look at the automated supplier feed, the information that it aggregates, and how we automate some information flows to give your business a competitive advantage in keeping your supply chain strong and your compliance in line. We heard about some of the documents and the challenges with time management and keeping suppliers honest that Jacqueline had shared. Our document management system is an incredibly powerful way to do that, and not just to manage your documents. What you see here is a robust digital repository that is oriented around action. The filters above on the types of documents and the sources of them, the status of your document and how it impacts your compliance. For example, having the ability to jump quickly to missing documents, which represent a compliance risk, and take action on them, that helps your business. But one of our superpowers in the industry is our ability to get foreign suppliers to interact. So what you see here is not just a robust digital filing cabinet. This is a two-sided portal that your suppliers actually log into and share information through. For example, if we're missing a training certificate, or if we're missing the acidified food certificate from one of our suppliers, we can request that through the system with just a couple of clicks and identify the actual contact that we work with at the supplier in order to get the request out. You'll see that you can have documents on an auto-renew status. So once a document has been created and uploaded, the expiration date will trigger automated outreach to your suppliers so that they will log in and put those documents into the system for you, helping you maintain compliance. Again, Jacqueline talked about how Supply chain verification is an important activity, but one that is a small fraction of the responsibility and the time commitment of FSQA professionals. We find that this system automates 90% of the work related to collecting documents from foreign suppliers. And in our system, we can use some real numbers and say that our clients have over 10 documents per supplier on average. And without the system, they spend over 2 hours per year per document chasing compliance. So what you see is a tool that automates supplier communication, and Registrar Corp is especially effective at that because the 30,000 suppliers, or the 30,000 customers that you heard Coley mention early in the call, those are predominantly foreign companies that are using Registrar to register their facilities so that they can do business in the United States. Those are folks that partner with Registrar Corp to show and be featured in the supplier marketplace. And so when they receive an email, a request, or information from Registrar, they answer. I receive a couple of times per week, messages that come from foreign suppliers who receive a message from ComplyHub. And they're not exactly sure what to do with it, but they come to us seeking help because they want to make sure that they respond. Like I said, when Registrar reaches out, foreign suppliers respond. That's one of our superpowers. I'd also like to quickly touch on a way that we use an automated feed to reduce your risk when it comes to managing documents. In addition to identifying that a hazard analysis, like Jacqueline mentioned, might be missing, we'll look at the products that you get and the suppliers that you get them from. The system will automatically evaluate the types of documents that you have identified and included, and use an ML algorithm to recommend documents that you can put in place to help ensure that your verification activities are in line, that you're running a compliant program, and that you're delivering good, safe food into the marketplace. So another way that we automate the tedious and time-consuming tasks of risk management, document management, and supply chain management using the ComplyHub platform. Now, again, the comments here are focused on FSVP requirements. We've also heard some commentary around being challenged by suppliers and potentially having to find new folks. Coley shouted out our supplier marketplace. The way that we deliver that information is unparalleled. And once again, we include a proprietary data feed that we set up for our customers at implementation. And so if we zoom in on a specific supplier to look at an example, for Belmocha, this supplier, we can see from the FDA data feeds that we have established a history going back 2 years of all the shipments that this company has sent into the US. And I'm interested specifically in coffee because that is the product that I buy from them. We have this proprietary data feed that uses your data in partnership with ComplyHub, right, to help show your market share. And you could look at this 2 different ways, that your shipments represent 44% of Belmocha's business. So if your service quality has been going down and if your payment terms have been getting less friendly, you realize that you have some real purchase power, some real influence over this company, and you can go renegotiate. Alternately, ComplyHub is the only way to definitively tell if your exclusivity agreements are being honored by your suppliers, because this uses data coming to customs from that supplier, right, and ties it and compares it to your shipment data that we're getting from customs and the FDA. And so either you identify opportunities to renegotiate an agreement based on the influence you have over a supplier, or you identify, I might need new suppliers because these folks are not honoring the agreement that we put in place. Either way, with just a click in the application, you can see the top 10 suppliers of the given product that you're looking at. You can see the number of shipments in the last several years and the percentage of market share that that represents to get a good grasp of who you want to talk to. And you can continue exploring by clicking the Go to Marketplace button. Now, in the interest of time, we'll move the discussion back over to Coley and to Jacqueline. Anybody who wants to dive deeper into the supplier marketplace or see a more robust demonstration is invited to follow up. We'll have some messaging that'll come out, and we encourage you to schedule a product demonstration. And I'll also share as a way to connect some of the themes that you've heard. ComplyHub is a way to centralize, automate, and organize your FSVP information, to automate the time-consuming and tedious tasks related to maintaining compliance. But it's not just all about FSVP plans. We also have, for example, online training in multiple languages. So it's not just about your certifications. If your supplier is missing a certification, you can refer online training to them. We'll have an exclusive discount code for folks as part of follow-up for access to an online training class. And everybody should know that Registrar Corp offers assistance with food safety plans, both reviews and plan writing services. And so if you do have a concern that you've properly done your hazard analysis, that you've evaluated all of the microbiological or chemical hazards associated to your product, we're there to help be a trusted advisor in keeping you compliant and, again, keeping your customers safe. So ComplyHub is a powerful tool that automates away much of the time that it takes to be compliant. And Registrar Corp is a partner that you can trust for a full suite of services focused on FDA compliance as it relates to FSVP or other. So Coley, I can hand it back to you. Thank you all for giving me a few minutes of attention.
Thank you, John. That was super helpful. And I mean, you just reminded me, I really want to highlight, we created this tool initially for FSVP importers and for food and beverage, but it goes so beyond that now, right? And it has features in it for sourcing, the sourcing team. So often, we'll have people on the call here for quality assurance, compliance, regulatory compliance, but I want to highlight that sourcing tool alone is so powerful because it's delivering you alternative suppliers. It allows you to scale up with FDA compliant suppliers, FDA compliant products. And so it's amazing in that way. And so I think that the tool deserves a look-see, if you call it, not only by the quality assurance people, but by the sourcing team. So if you're on this call and you say, hey, this is great for quality assurance and FSVP, but let me show this to my sourcing, please give them our information, let us have their information, and we'll show it to them. Because we are finding, especially with our retailers, a lot of our importer distributors are finding great value in that sourcing tool. And then we talked about the document management system and monitoring the supply chain, but we really want to highlight this tool not only monitors the suppliers, but it monitors your DUNS number. And right now, that's like your social security number when it comes to FDA compliance. You want to be on top of that daily. So it's a sourcing tool. It's an FDA compliance quality assurance tool. It has lots of features that will benefit. I even want to say it's a customs tool. Our customs divisions of some of our larger clients are very interested in knowing about shipment history on some of our suppliers, knowing about the import alerts and the import refusals and recalls, because that allows them to understand what type of delay they'll experience at the port or the border when they are doing your customs entries and scheduling arrivals for your shipments. So this is a customs tool. This is a sourcing tool. This is a quality assurance. And I get in trouble using the word tool. And I've been instructed that I can't say tool, but that's really how I feel. It is a tool in your toolbox, but it is SaaS. It is software. It's a lot more high tech than that. So I don't want to go primitive with the word tool, but that is what this is. And so next slide, Alexis. And so again, when I sit here and I'm speaking to you, I want you to say, we are assisting these companies right here on the screen that you see here, and we're helping them in their sourcing, in their compliance, in their document management, in their monitoring of suppliers. And then beyond that, like next slide, Alexis, beyond that, it's beyond the software, but we also have food safety services where, companies are now coming to us and saying, help, we need help getting these FSVPs up to date and compliant. You have 50 to 100 FSVPs to write, and sometimes even more. And it's hard for everybody to get that done, especially when you have a team of 1, 2, or 3. So Registrar Corp is able to assist you with that. So if you're on this call right now and you're saying, we need that help, you'd want some pricing for that, let us know. Because we're more than just the software. We're a regulatory team of 300 plus people in our corporate office. We have 20 offices around the world. So we're speaking the foreign language. We're speaking the compliance language. We have the software and the services and the expertise to bring you up to where you need to be. And I always tell people there's no shame in the game. We're working with really large clients, really small clients, and everybody is struggling to get caught up. Even some of the biggest names, which I will never mention. Everybody's trying to get caught up. And so just give us a call and we will be able to write those FS for you, advise you, consult you, provide the software that helps complement what you're already doing. Maybe you're already doing a great job with your FSVPs, but you need to be more automated. So that's what we're talking about today. Do I have Jacqueline still on? I want to pull you back into the scene, Jacqueline, because there's no better example of success and good software and support than someone that's actually using it. So Jacqueline, I just, not to put you on the spot, but do you find that you've gained hours, times, and resources back into your week because of working with Registrar Corp? Can you speak to that at all?
I can. I could probably get you the numbers on how much time and energy we save not having to store all of this in files and folders and set reminders for ourselves to go back and ask for documentation as it expires. Registrar Corp has really helped us streamline that and made requesting things as simple as hitting a button. And there are always situations where we have to clarify a document with a supplier, but for the most part, the amount of time this allows us to now spend on continuous improvement rather than just collecting documents or sifting through various websites to figure out how our suppliers are doing or if they've had import alerts is immeasurable. It just allows us to reprioritize where we focus our energy.
Right. Well, thank you for sharing that. And another thing I definitely want to highlight is, people usually will go to companies and buy software, ask for assistance. But in our scenario, we're more than that. So when you become a ComplyHub client, what happens is you have unlimited regulatory support, email support. You could ask us any question. It would be the equivalent of you trying to email FDA and get an answer. And they're busy and they're a government agency, but you email Registrar Corp as a ComplyHub client and you get an answer. You'd be surprised some of the very detailed questions that we get from our importer distributors, our importer retailers, our importer manufacturers. They come to us with questions that are detailed in the area of labeling and ingredients. They come to us about FCE, SID, low acid canned food questions, registration questions, regulation questions, you just name it. And they can email us because they're a ComplyHub client and we answer it. And, and we will put it to one of our teams. We have a labeling ingredient team. We have the FCE team. We have the food safety team. So the support is there. We don't just give you a solution and then walk away. And that's another reason why Jacqueline's here today, because, we talk every day. Well, correct, I don't talk to Jacqueline every day. She's too busy for that. But we are in touch with our clients and we are a resource for them, an expert resource. Again, over 300 specialists here in the corporate office and then 20 offices around the world. So you are in good hands. We are an extension of what you're doing well already. And we're just here to enhance and perfect it for you. So super excited. But next slide. So if you would, before and we're not ending here, but I just wanted to make sure that if you would tell us what topics we should cover with a 2-minute survey, for our next webinar, we'd super appreciate it. And if you just take a moment to do that, we will make sure that you get a copy of this presentation, because again, it has the 15 the best practices, it has the definition of FSVP, it talks about the challenges, and again, we want to be a resource for you. So we're looking forward to being that for you. Next slide. I think that's going to take us to questions and answers. And so I'm going to check here to see if we have any questions. Okay, so we have someone asking about the importer of record again versus FSVP importer. So I will note that again, just to be very specific. The importer of record is a customs term, and the FSVP importer is a designation that is done by putting your DUNS number in the FSVP party field which is a pop-up window that comes up on that screen when your custom broker is doing the entry, and it disappears right after you put the DUNS number, and there's no evidence, there's no fingerprints. So you're not going to know about it unless you're using a tool like ours, where we're monitoring your DUNS number, and we can say, hey, someone just used your DUNS number, and this is the supplier name, this is the custom broker that did the entry, and now you very comfortably, as a U.S. importer who realize that that's not your supplier, you can go to them and reach out. Okay, yes, we had another question. How do I monitor DUNS numbers? Great question. Sign up with ComplyHub. ComplyHub is a system that monitors your DUNS number every 30 to 45 days. It's going to give you an update on what suppliers are using your DUNS number in that FSVP party field, to be clear. So if your DUNS number is in the FSVP party field, every 30 to 45 days, that system is going to let you know who's using it. And therefore you can go, okay, well then consequently they're choosing us as an FSVP importer, and you can go through it, look and see if they should be using it. It says, next question, what if we have very few and affiliated suppliers? How can your services still be useful? I think. Useful. Do you help review plans or conduct audits? Great question. So first of all, even if you have, I know people with 3 suppliers, and sometimes those 3 suppliers have 2 facilities each. Now because it's really not about the suppliers, but it's about the unique food safety environments. And even if you have 3, you could have 20 products coming from 3 suppliers or 2 suppliers. And those 20 products still have to be evaluated. When we talk about an FSVP, there's the FSVP that addresses the food safety environment in a certain product category. But then if you have 20 product categories, cookies, cake, marshmallows, there could be hazards, 3 different hazards that you must address in those 3 different product categories. So while you only have 2 or 3 suppliers, you could have 20 plans that still need to be written. So don't be thrown by the number of your suppliers. And yes, we do have a plan review. And so please reach out to us. We'll share with you how that works. Because like I said, people think big or small, maybe this doesn't apply to them or they don't need us. But let me tell you, big or small, you do need us, because we can help with, it's a big misconception. 2 suppliers, you could have 80 products. That's almost 80 different types of plans because of the product category. Here's another one. There is no in regards to FSVP, but does Registrar Corp provide assistance services regarding U.S. artwork labels requirements? So if you're talking about FDA labeling regulations, yes, most definitely. So Registrar Corp has an artist, and so therefore we have the specialist that will redo your nutritional facts panel, make sure fonts and everything on packaging is placed properly, and then we can put everything and deliver you a completed label, because we have artists that are able to do that as well. Put everything back together again, basically. We're not just reviewing your label and telling you about it. We're reviewing your label and completing it. But with that being said, we have other services where we can do a truncated label check or review. And we also have a software solution that you can do your own nutritional labeling. So that's super exciting. That's a new thing that we added to our system. And I think we have, and any questions that we don't get to today, we will be happy to include them. For those who complete the survey, we will include those answers and questions for you. We appreciate you taking the time today. And the main driving point that we wanted to point out was, in your FSVP program, promise me that you'll centralize, you'll organize, and you'll automate. Let's leave the Excel spreadsheets. They're very pretty and very nice, and I've been very impressed with the architecture of many of them. But it's time to move to a bigger system where it's automated and dynamic. We have one more quick question. We have a supplier verification program, and hold on here. We have a supplier verification program and a HACCP plan with annual verification and validation. We are also GFSI. Excellent. That's great news. I'm glad to hear that. I don't know if you're a foreign exporter or what, but that's great, because you're getting your food safety plans together, and that's what your importer is going to need. And so continue to do that. And if you have any questions, give us a call. Like I said, being a ComplyHub client opens up the resources to you immensely. Unlimited email support, a certain number of consulting hours every year. So we want to be here for you. So give us a call, shoot an email. I'm Coley Anderson. And again, I've been with Registrar Corp for quite a while. And I can tell you that you can guarantee our expertise. I think that's all that I have. Let me see if there's any other questions that I'm missing. Okay, just a few. Okay, so I think that we are good here. So I want to, So I want to thank everybody for taking the time today to join us. Again, send us an email, and we will be happy to answer any of your questions and get you enrolled in a food safety program that fits best your needs and your requirements for FDA. I think that's the very last slide, so I think we're finished. So thank you so very much.